Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Kalamata, Greece on October 6, 2025 for A Reason to Resist. Today we're going to examine events in occupied Palestine in the past 48 hours since our last report on the response of the resistance to Trump's ultimatum. But before doing that, I wanted to share news with you about an important legal development relating to the Palestinian cause. Before I get into that, please like and share this video if you find it to be informative. And if you're not already a subscriber, we encourage you to become one. We've established Reason to Resist about a year ago in the summer of 2024. Since that time, our subscriber base has grown rapidly and now exceeds 106,000. And our goal is to reach 150,000 subscribers by the end of the year. It's an ambitious goal, and you can help us achieve it by subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done so. And to all those who have supported our channel in any way, we express our profound gratitude. Now, let's turn to the news on the legal front. Last week, I and 4 other lawyers in Canada launched a $10 million lawsuit against Toronto Metropolitan University on behalf of 10 current and former students at the university's Lincoln Alexander School of Law. All 5 lawyers are acting for the plaintiffs on a pro bono basis. The core allegation of this lawsuit is that the administration of the university falsely accused our clients of anti-Semitism and intolerance, and did so on a statement it published on its website in October 2023, a couple of weeks after Israel's genocidal rampage began. The background of this lawsuit is as follows. On October 20th, 2023, almost 2 weeks after Israel began its genocidal rampage in the Strip, dozens of law students at the university's law school signed a letter criticizing the law school's administration for its public commentary about the war on Gaza and its failure to stand clearly with the oppressed Palestinian people. The letter was intended to be private, but someone leaked it to the press. It's important to understand that at that point in time, the point in time at which our clients signed this letter, Israeli forces had already killed far more civilians in Gaza than were killed by Palestinian militants on October 7th of 2023. In addition, by October 20th of 2023, and as the International Court of Justice later acknowledged, senior Israeli officials had made statements during that period that were openly genocidal. Those officials included Israeli President Isaac Herzog, the war criminal Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the then defense minister, also a war criminal, Yoav Gallant. Both Netanyahu and Gallant were since indicted by the ICC for war crimes and crimes against humanity. When our client's letter to the law school's administration was leaked to the press, all hell broke loose. Among other things, 24 influential and affluent Zionist lawyers, including a former judge on the Ontario Court of Appeal, and a couple of members of the benchers of the Law Society of Ontario, which is essentially the board of directors of the legal profession in Ontario, they signed an open letter that made outrageous accusations against the signatories, including the demonstrably false claim that they had endorsed rape. An absolute lie. There was no such endorsement, explicit or implicit, in the letter that they addressed to the administration of the university. In fact, many of the signatories were women, and that scurrilous allegation was deeply hurtful to them. Now, Zionist lawyers, those in particular who signed this open letter, but not only them, effectively threatened to withdraw or withhold donations from the law school of Toronto Metropolitan University if it did not exact severe punishment on the signatories of the letter, who of course included our 10 clients. Under intense pressure from Zionists in Canada's legal profession, TMU, that's what they call Toronto Metropolitan University, folded up like a cheap suit and issued a statement on a website in which it falsely accused our clients of anti-Semitism and intolerance. It then launched an external review to determine whether our clients had violated the university's code of conduct, and if so, what punishment would be appropriate. And one of the potential penalties on the table, if they were found to have violated the code of conduct, was expulsion from the university. Obviously, that would have been devastating to these young students. So the person whom the university hired to conduct this external review was a well-respected retired Chief Justice of the Superior Court of the Province of Nova Scotia. His name was Justice MacDonald. And Justice MacDonald's conclusion, after months of exhaustive investigation, was that the students, in fact, had not made any expressions of anti-Semitism and had not violated the students' code of conduct, and therefore that no penalty was warranted. And just so you know, I actually represented one of the students in that external review. She and I had the opportunity to meet with Justice MacDonald and to provide to him fairly voluminous materials as to the decades-long brutal oppression of the Palestinian people. My client also provided a written statement. We explained the background of this matter, and we had a constructive conversation, as did other students, along with their counsel, all of whom, including me, were acting then as well on a pro bono basis. Justice MacDonald not only rejected the allegation that the students had expressed anti-Semitism in their letter or had otherwise violated the code of conduct, he also chastised the university for its accusation against them and accused them of the university of having inflicted unnecessary harm upon the students. And he took to task the 24 lawyers who signed that outrageous letter smearing our students. Now, despite the issuance of Justice MacDonald's report in May of last year, 16 months ago, the TMU administration refused to delete its defamatory statement from its website. That statement remained there until the day that we announced this lawsuit, which is Friday of last week, October 3rd. Tellingly, following the announcement of our lawsuit, TMU finally and belatedly deleted its defamatory statement from its website. And you can see here the page from the TMU website that comes up when you press on the link to the statement. Now, I should add that the university's administration didn't even have the courtesy to notify us that they had deleted the defamatory statement. One of our clients just happened to check and discovered that it was no longer publicly available, at least not on the website. So for 16 months following the issuance of Justice MacDonald's report, the university administration effectively thumbed its nose at his conclusion and continued to smear our clients. It was only when the university realized that our clients are determined to defend their reputations in a court of law that the administration of the university belatedly deleted its statement. This, I would suggest, my friends, is not the kind of principled behavior one would expect from a school of law or any other institution of higher learning that seeks to promote free and open debate and intellectual development. Rather, this is the kind of cynical, self-serving, crass behavior that one would expect from a for-profit corporation. And increasingly, that's exactly what Canada's universities look like. They look like profit-maximizing corporate entities rather than institutions of higher learning. On October 3rd, when our clients announced their lawsuit against TMU, they issued a statement. And I'd like to show you what they had to say at that time. So you see here the first page. First of all, there's the announcement of the lawsuit, and then they appended to the announcement of the lawsuit, which was distributed to the press on October 3rd, their own statement. And they wrote as follows: "We are a group of Lincoln Alexander School of Law students and alumni who are signatories to the Abolitionist Organizing Collective's 2023 open letter to the Dean in support of Palestine. Today, we have served a lawsuit against Toronto Metropolitan University for wrongful acts, including defamatory mischaracterization of our principled stance against genocide as anti-Semitism and negligent misrepresentation as being a school where social and racial justice advocacy would be welcome." Just to clarify, what they're saying there is that before they decided to enroll at the Lincoln Alexander School of Law at this university, they relied upon representations made by the administration of the law school to the public that this was an institution that would be particularly focused on fostering anti-oppression studies, discussion and debate, indigenous rights, and a general, it would foster a general open and progressive environment in which students could learn the practice of law. And then the students went on and said this: "We stand united against all forms of racism, discrimination, and hate. We condemn anti-Semitism. We condemn Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism. We condemn all war crimes, including the genocidal campaign of ethnic cleansing that Israel has been perpetrating against Palestinians since 1948. We stand steadfastly behind the statements made in the open letter to the Dean. The United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry in the occupied Palestinian territory has investigated Israel's actions for 2 years and released its report on 16 September 2025, concluding Israel is committing the crime of genocide. The United Nations Commission's comprehensive investigation found both underlying acts of genocide and genocidal intent. The thorough investigation of Chief Justice Michael McDonald's external review final report concluded that the letter to the Dean was not anti-Semitic. This is a genocide. Opposition to genocide is not anti-Semitism. It is fundamentally just to oppose genocide. We will not be intimidated into silence. Institutions like TMU can and should oppose this genocide. Stop the genocide, free Palestine." And I will tell you, my friends, that representing these fine young, recently admitted or aspiring members of the bar is a privilege. We don't know exactly where this litigation will go. We are fully prepared for a long and hard-fought battle. It remains to be seen whether the university administration has finally grown a conscience about the genocide and about the suppression of pro-Palestinian voices on its campus. Now, on a side note, in April of this year, I publicly challenged all 24 of the Zionist lawyers who tried to sabotage the careers of our clients to a debate. Some of you will have heard this already from me. The question I asked them to debate with me was whether Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. And just to ensure that they were aware of my debate challenge, I not only talked about it on my program and on other social media, I also sent them an email personally, alerting them to the fact that I was challenging them to this debate. And despite their many accomplishments as legal advocates and the high esteem in which they are held by the Canadian legal establishment, and the many accolades that have been showered upon them, not a single one of these characters summoned the courage to accept my challenge to debate this quintessentially important question about human rights. Now, as many of you will now know, following the September 30th press conference in the White House, when Trump and Netanyahu issued an ultimatum to the resistance in Gaza, Hamas issued a carefully worded response. And at this point, I'd like to shift from the subject of the lawsuit we just filed and talk to you about developments relating to the Palestinian struggle for liberation that have occurred within the past 48 hours. To those who were paying close attention to Hamas's response to the Trump ultimatum of September 30th, it was clear that the response did not constitute an outright acceptance of Trump's ultimatum, nor did it constitute an outright rejection. On the contrary, Hamas accepted key parts of the plan, as I explained in my last report published 2 days ago on Saturday. And at the same time, Hamas unambiguously rejected other key aspects of the report, albeit in highly diplomatic terms. The Hamas response, the diplomatic tenor of it, worked. It worked in the sense that it prompted Trump to issue a statement demanding that Israel stop bombing the Gaza Strip. And here you can see that statement issued on October 3rd. Trump wrote, or somebody purporting to be Trump wrote, "Based on the statement just issued by Hamas, I believe they are ready for a lasting peace. Israel must immediately stop the bombing of Gaza so that we can get the hostages out safely and quickly." Notice, he doesn't say so that, little children, women, elderly men, military-age men who are not involved in hostilities. We have to stop the bombing so that their suffering will end, that they will stop dying, that they will stop being blown to bits. No, that's not why we have to stop the bombing. We have to stop the bombing to get out those so-called hostages, who are in fact 20 Israeli soldiers who are now held in custody as prisoners of war in the Gaza Strip. And Trump, or whoever wrote this on his behalf, went on and said, right now it's far too dangerous to do that. In other words, to get the hostages out. We are already in discussions on details to be worked out. This is not about Gaza alone. This is about long-sought peace in the Middle East. Now, predictably, Israel's genocidal regime has not stopped bombing Gaza. That's something that even the Western media are acknowledging. This is a report today in The Guardian. You'll see deadly Israeli airstrikes continue as Hamas and Israel to start and direct talks on Gaza plan. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday urged Israel to stop bombing Gaza ahead of the discussions in Egypt. So now the Israelis have heard from both the president and the U.S. Secretary of State, and they're still bombing the bejesus out of Gaza. Rubio said, you can't release hostages in the middle of strikes, so the strikes will have to stop. So again, Rubio is putting all the emphasis, 100%, on the security of the Israeli soldiers, many of whom, if not all of whom, are war criminals, and not even one iota of concern is being expressed by Rubio for the Palestinian civilians who are being blown to bits by the sadistic Israeli bombing of the Gaza Strip. And The Guardian goes on and says, despite this warning, at least 7 Palestinian civilians have been killed by Israeli forces across the Gaza Strip since dawn on Monday, according to Palestinian news agency Wafa. Gaza civil defense spokesperson Mahmoud Bazal told the BBC, meanwhile, that 24 Palestinian people were killed in the latest 24 hours, with Israeli bombardment having continued overnight and into Monday. Now, the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza disclosed more detail today about Israel's murderous assaults during the past 24 hours. And this is a statement published today on the Resistance News Network Telegram channel. The Ministry of Health in Gaza reports that 21 martyrs, including 2 retrieved martyrs and 96 injuries, have arrived at the Gaza Strip hospitals in the past 24 hours. A number of victims are still under the rubble on the roads as ambulance and civil defense crews are unable to reach them. The toll of the Israeli aggression has risen to 67,160 and 169,679 injuries since October 7th, 2023. That comes out, my friends, to in excess of 230,000 people. The toll of the martyrs and injuries, said the Ministry of Health, from March 18th, that's when Israel tore up the ceasefire agreement that the United States did nothing to preserve. The toll from that date until today has reached 13,568 martyrs and 57,638 injuries. Among the martyrs of livelihood, the number of martyrs from aid distribution who arrived at hospitals in the past 24 hours is 2, and 19 injuries. So they're still gunning down Palestinians who are desperately seeking food at these so-called aid distribution sites. And the Ministry of Health says that the total number of persons who have been killed at these sites and who reached hospitals is 2,610 persons. They've massacred at what are supposed to be points of distribution of humanitarian aid over 2,600 Palestinians, and have injured more than 19,000 of them. These are the monstrosities that continue to this very day to be perpetrated after both Trump and Rubio purportedly demanded that Israel stop bombing the Gaza Strip. Now, let us move on to the obvious conclusion that Hamas, its response, has not yet resulted in a cessation or even a pause in Israel's mass murder of Palestinians, although it does appear that Israeli forces are no longer seeking to advance into the ground forces I'm talking about, to advance into Gaza City. But the killing continues apace. Nonetheless, I would suggest that even though the Hamas response has not succeeded in bringing about a cessation or even a pause of the killing, nonetheless, it has had an important effect. And of course, it remains to be seen whether it will result in the days ahead in a cessation of the killing. But even if it doesn't, it has, in my view, had a significant effect, one that is beneficial to the Palestinian people. Even if Trump doesn't eventually bring enough pressure to bear on Netanyahu to end the slaughter, what was going on when this ultimatum was issued on September 30th? At the time, I took the position that the ultimatum had been structured in such a way as to make it almost inevitable that Hamas would reject it, or at least not accept it outright, and would demand important changes to the plan. I went so far as to suggest that perhaps the plan or the ultimatum had been designed to be rejected by Hamas. I'm sure that at least Netanyahu, who's not as clueless about the Palestinian resistance as Trump is, at a bare minimum, he and his close advisors understood that there was a high likelihood that Hamas, no resistance group, would accept this thing outright and would demand changes to it. In my view, what this really was primarily designed to do was to shift blame onto the Palestinian people for their own destruction. In other words, Trump and Netanyahu must have anticipated that the resistance groups would likely reject this. And at this point, their plan was to say to the public in the West, where Israel's reputation has been plummeting precipitously, look, we did everything we could. We put a generous offer on the table. These bloodthirsty savages said no. They want the war to continue. We have no alternative but to, quote unquote, finish the job. So it was really just a setup to transfer culpability for the suffering of the Palestinian people on the resistance groups, and at least slow down, if not arrest altogether, the rapid decline in Israel's standing in Western governments. Now, Trump's demand that Israel stop bombing Gaza, if in fact this was an ultimatum whose primary purpose was to advance a propagandistic narrative, namely that the resistance groups were responsible for the suffering of the Palestinian people. If that's what its main purpose was, maybe its exclusive purpose, then I think that narrative has now been blown out of the water by Trump's response to the Hamas response to the ultimatum. As I said, following the Hamas response, Trump put out a statement demanding that Israel stop bombing Gaza and explicitly, unambiguously asserting that Hamas wanted peace. So now if Israel and Hamas don't do a deal, how is Trump going to be able to persuade people that the resistance groups are the ones who are responsible for the breakdown of the negotiations? It's certainly going to be a lot harder, if not impossible. And Trump and Netanyahu were already operating in a highly challenging environment from a propaganda perspective because of all the lies that Israel has demonstrably told during these 2 years of heinous genocide. So I think that whatever happens in terms of the negotiations, and let us hope, I'm sure that all of you do, that this will result in a cessation of the genocide on terms that respect the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. Nonetheless, Hamas has scored an important victory from a public relations perspective. Now, interestingly, Israeli media seem to be conditioning the Israeli public for the survival of Hamas. Writing in the Hebrew newspaper Yedioth Achronoth, commentator Nadav Iyal wrote today that Hamas is not likely to disappear. He postulated that it is a popular movement deeply rooted in Palestinian public opinion. Now, admittedly, I'm highly skeptical that Trump will ultimately force the Netanyahu regime to bring this slaughter to an end on terms that the Palestinian resistance groups and the Palestinian people themselves can accept. But it's critical to bear in mind that even if the pressure at this particular point in time on Trump to bring the slaughter to an end, and ultimately it will depend upon Western governments, Israel isn't going to stop murdering Palestinian people until it's held accountable. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. What does that mean, held accountable? But even if at this point in time, Trump and other so-called Western leaders don't feel that enough pressure is being applied upon them that they must bring the slaughter to an end, at some point, the divide between public opinion in the streets of Western cities and the policy of continuing to support Israel as it commits these heinous acts of genocide before our very eyes, that disparity between the two will become so great that Western governments will be forced to withdraw their support for Israel. Now, you may say, oh no, they've demonstrated over and over again that they don't care about public opinion. I think the evidence shows that in fact they do. That's precisely why they invest so much time and energy in trying to propagandize us, in trying to brainwash people, because they know that we, the people, vastly outnumber them, and that if we become sufficiently united and determined in our opposition to their depraved behavior, they will have no alternative if they want to remain in power or even simply preserve their own privilege or security in the world. They will have no alternative but to accede to the demands of the people. Now, I just mentioned a moment ago that Israel will not stop killing Palestinians until they're held accountable. Accountability, it's important to stress, can take many forms. One form of accountability would be that Trump and other Western leaders tell the Israelis in no uncertain terms that they are going to withdraw their support from Israel if Israel doesn't end the genocide and begin respecting the basic rights of the Palestinian people. That would be a form of accountability. Another form of accountability would be that at least a handful of senior Israeli political and military leaders are hauled before a court of competent jurisdiction and are tried and convicted for war crimes and crimes against humanity, and are dealt a sufficiently severe punishment for these monstrosities. That too would be a form of accountability. Another form of accountability would be that boycotts reach such a level of support within the Western world and elsewhere, boycotts against Israeli corporations and the Israeli government, that the people collectively deliver a devastating blow to the Israeli economy. That too would be a form of accountability. And another form of accountability is a decisive military defeat, which is precisely where Israel, in my opinion, is heading if it continues to wage war against the resistance and escalates the war or resumes the war against the Islamic Republic of Iran. But if none of that happens, no matter what Western leaders may say, no matter how many condemnations they may utter against the genocidal Israeli regime, have no doubt that Israel will continue to mass murder the people of Palestine, not only in the Gaza Strip, but also in the occupied West Bank, eventually West Jerusalem, and then finally within the 1948 boundaries of Israel as well. And bear in mind that if and when the Israelis are enabled and permitted to inflict similar atrocities upon the Palestinian people of Palestinian origin living as citizens within the land of Israel itself, it'll be far easier for the Israelis to force them outside of Israeli territory because they could open up a corridor, terrorize them into fleeing their towns and villages, particularly in the north of Israel, and open up a land corridor to the border between occupied Palestine and Lebanon, and then force them en masse into Lebanon, or perhaps they could do the same thing with Syria. And who, at the end of the day, if it's not going to be Western governments or resistance groups, who's going to stop them? In the case of Gaza, the only way that they can expel the Palestinians by land is to force them into the Sinai Desert, which is obviously Egyptian territory and under Egyptian control. And the whatever criticisms we may direct against al-Sisi, and there are many compelling criticisms to be made of that sadistic dictator, at a minimum, he seems to have conveyed to the Israelis effectively that he is not going to allow them to expel the people of Gaza into the Sinai Desert. In any event, I come back to what I just said a moment ago. The key here to bringing the slaughter to an end is to impose real accountability on the genocidal regime of Netanyahu and also on any other persons in the upper echelons of Israeli politics and the Israeli military who have participated in this genocide. Harsh rhetoric, my friends, just ain't going to cut it. Not even close. Now, if by chance Trump is not yet serious enough to force Netanyahu's hand and oblige him to bring the slaughter to an end, the killing will, of course, continue, but so too will the rapid decline in Israel's standing in Western countries and in particular in the United States. And on that note, I'd like to take you to a very interesting poll that was just conducted in the United States. The poll was conducted by the Washington Post, published this weekend. The headline, as you'll see here, is "Many American Jews Sharply Critical of Israel on Gaza, Post-Poll Finds." And here are the most pertinent results of this poll. According to the poll, 61% of American Jews now say Israel has committed war crimes in Gaza, and about 4 in 10 say the country is guilty of genocide against the Palestinian people. Among Jews aged 18 to 34, 50%, one half, say Israel is committing genocide. Wow. Now let me just pause there before I go on and tell you about some other aspects of this poll. You know, these pro-Israel lobby groups in Canada, the most notable and aggressive and influential of them is called the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. They've been telling us for years that they and only they speak for the Jewish community, and that any of these wonderful anti-Zionist Jewish groups who criticize Israel, in Canada, a leading organization in that regard is Independent Jewish Voices. In the United States, it's Jewish Voice for Peace. That these people are on the margins of the Jewish community and they don't speak for Jewish people in Canada and the United States. Well, folks, when 61% of American Jews are saying that Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza, guess what? Groups like Jewish Voice for Peace now have a far more legitimate claim to be speaking on behalf of American Jews than organizations like AIPAC, which will not utter a peep of criticism of Israel's violations of international law and human rights. The tables have turned, and that spells real trouble for the genocidal regime. So what else did this poll show? More American Jews, 48%, disapprove of Israel's actions than approve of it, 46%. Now, I want to just pause there and note that the percentage of respondents who said that they believe Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza is 61%, but only 48% disapprove. That's still more than approve of Israel's actions, but that means that there are some people within the American Jewish community who believe Israel is committing war crimes in the Gaza Strip and nonetheless approve of Israel's conduct in the Gaza Strip. Needless to say, that is disgraceful. It's really quite appalling. But the important fact here, and it's stunning, really, is that more people in the United States, in the Jewish community, disapprove of Israel's actions in Gaza than approve of it. 2 years after the attacks of October 7th. And the poll also found that 68% of American Jews give negative marks to Netanyahu. I personally find that gobsmacking that 32% of American Jews are not prepared to give negative marks to that satanic war criminal. Nonetheless, it's over 2/3 of American Jews have a negative view of Netanyahu. And according to the poll, a majority of American Jews, 58%, continue to feel at least some connection to Israeli Jews, but that number dropped sharply to 36% among Jews aged between 18 and 34 years. And those, of course, are the future leaders of the American Jewish community. All of this spells huge trouble for Israel. If Israel loses the support of American Jews, its genocidal project is finished. And the more the genocide continues, the more Israel will lose support, not only from American Jews, but from the broader US population, including evangelical Christians. The events of the last few days, and especially Trump's demand that Israel stop bombing Gaza, have persuaded me that the Trump-Netanyahu publicity stunt on September 30th is not likely to reverse the downward trend for Israel's standing in the United States. And there's more news that will undermine the narrative that Palestinians are to blame for their own destruction. Axios just reported that Trump dropped the F-bomb on Netanyahu in a tense telephone conversation between them that reportedly took place last Friday, October 3rd. And I think that the Axios article merits a closer look. So let me pull that up here and show you in detail what it had to say. So you'll see the headline is, "You're so fucking negative," Trump tells Netanyahu during Gaza talks. It sounds like a marital couple having a spat. And the article goes on and says, U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly asked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stop being so negative as Hamas and Tel Aviv appeared on the brink of a peace deal 2 years into the bloody war in Gaza. No, that's the war on Gaza. Axios still hasn't got that right. And then Axios writes, the U.S. leader dialed the Israeli premier to give the good news after Hamas agreed to Trump's Gaza peace proposal. That too is not accurate. It agreed to elements of it, but diplomatically rejected other key elements. Axios writes, but Netanyahu felt differently and told Trump there was nothing to celebrate about the development and that it doesn't mean anything, according to the report. Trump fired back, I don't know why you're always so fucking negative. This is a win. Take it. The report quoted a U.S. official privy to the development as saying. Officials further told the publication that on Friday's private call, the Israeli leader told Trump he viewed Hamas's response to Washington's plan as a rejection. Quoting an Israeli official, Axios reported that Netanyahu wanted Washington and Tel Aviv to put out a response to avoid the narrative that Hamas had answered positively to Trump's proposal. But Trump was in a different mood. He was reportedly concerned that Hamas would reject his plan outright and saw the actual response as an opening for a deal. And therefore, Israeli Prime Minister's tepid reaction earned Trump's fiery response. Now, there is, of course, the possibility, and I would, be the last person to deny this. In fact, I've been saying over and over again during the past 2 years that the U.S. administration that happened to be in power, whether it was Biden or whether it was Donald Trump during these 2 years of genocide, that they have been engaging in all kinds of orchestrated leaks to the compliant corporate press in the United States and in Israel to convey the impression that the president is trying really, really hard to bring the slaughter to an end and to place distance between the U.S. government and the satanic crimes of the Israeli regime. And let me give you one of many, many examples of this. If it sounds familiar to you, the U.S. president dropping the F-bomb on Netanyahu, that's because we have seen this kabuki theater before. This is an article in the Times of Israel from October of 2024, a year ago, and Biden was said to call Netanyahu a fucking liar after Israeli troops entered Rafah. Of course, Rafah was afterwards completely leveled to the ground, and the Israeli military has never left, right up until the day that the Democratic administration was turfed out of office in January of this year and replaced by the war criminal Donald Trump. So, this claim in retrospect, in light of what subsequently happened, that Biden was furious with Netanyahu's lies about Rafah, has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. And I think this is a prime example of, it being leaked to the media that the US president was so angry with Netanyahu that he used expletives, just to convey the impression that they're trying really, really hard in the White House to stop the murderous rampage of Israel. So this Axios report just could be another instance of that. I think we have to entertain that as a serious possibility. But here's the thing, folks, that even if this is not sincere, even if Trump is not genuinely angry with Netanyahu or not angry enough to force Netanyahu to comply and to do a deal that the Palestinians can live with, that will bring an end to this genocide, the fact of the matter is that this report, again, undermines any attempt by the US and Israeli governments to paint the resistance groups as being responsible for the continuation of the war. Because Trump is reportedly telling Netanyahu in a private conversation, they want peace, and you're the problem. You're being too negative, man. So this simply is going to constitute an impediment to any effort on the part of the Netanyahu regime or the US government in the days ahead if the negotiations break down. And personally, I think there's a high probability that they will. Again, I would love to be wrong about that. But this will make it much more difficult for them to claim that the responsible parties are the Palestinians. And yet another possibility about what is going on here, in light of what we just saw 3 weeks ago, is that Trump and Netanyahu are putting on a spectacle to lure the Hamas negotiators to a location where Israel can murder them. Reportedly, Hamas negotiators are now in Cairo, and indirect negotiations between Hamas and Israel have begun. Is Israel insane enough to try to kill the Hamas negotiators in Egypt? They certainly are. Does that mean that they're going to try? Especially after Egypt has its dictator, I think, has sent out messages that he would regard that as a potential act of war. I don't know. I mean, I think they're capable of it. Whether or not they are going to do this or attempt it in these particular circumstances is something that I think is unlikely. But again, who knows with these psychopaths? Only time will tell whether we have finally reached a serious, definitive push by Washington to bring this Holocaust to an end. But one thing is clear, and that is, with each passing day, Israel's army and economy become weaker, and its standing in the world sinks lower. On top of all of that, the reputational costs, the demoralization and exhaustion in Israel's military, the beating its economy has taken, Israel continues to sustain blows from Ansar Allah in Yemen. And here you can see a report from the Yemeni resistance. This was published also on the Resistance News Network. This was today. Triumphing for the oppressed Palestinian people and their dear mujahideen, and in response to the crimes of genocide and the dangerous escalation carried out by the Israeli army against our people in the Gaza Strip, the missile force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a qualitative military operation using a Palestine II hypersonic ballistic missile with multiple warheads, targeting several sensitive targets in the occupied Jerusalem area. The operation successfully achieved its objectives thanks to Allah and caused millions of herds of usurping Zionists to flee to shelters. The Yemeni forces are monitoring developments in Gaza in light of recent developments and confirm that with Allah's help and in coordination with the resistance, they are monitoring the situation, particularly those related to halting the Zionist aggression and lifting the siege on the Gaza Strip. The results of these developments on the ground will be dealt with in a manner conducive to achieving the demands of our oppressed Palestinian people. We will continue our support operations until the aggression against Gaza stops and the siege is lifted. And as I mentioned, if Israel is determined to resume the hostilities against the Islamic Republic of Iran, then at that stage, I think there's a high likelihood that we are going to witness, if not the outright destruction of Israel, then certainly military blows that it will be unable to sustain, and that will force it to engage in some form of a capitulation. And finally, my friends, one of the Hamas negotiators who is now in Cairo is Dr. Khalil al-Hayya, head of the Hamas movement in the Gaza Strip. It was Dr. al-Hayya whose son was murdered in an Israeli strike in Qatar a few weeks ago. And this weekend, Dr. al-Hayya spoke publicly for the first time about the death of his son. And I'd like to share with you some of what he had to say. This was a statement published on the military media channel, and Dr. al-Hayya is quoted as saying as follows: "Brothers, in these moments we feel nothing but God's divine favor. But by God, brothers, despite the pain of separation from my son, my escort, my office manager, and the young men around me, despite this pain, which is natural pain, it comes to a human being. We are neither iron nor stone. We cry for our martyrs. We cry for our families. We cry for our brothers. But believe me, brothers, during the entire past period, what I see regarding our people made me forget. What I see every day of killing, tyranny, assassinations, and destruction in Gaza, these scenes make me forget the pain of losing my loved ones, my brothers and others. No, I feel that all of them are like my own children. I do not differentiate between my son Hammam and Jihad and Abdullah and Ahmed and Moamen. I do not differentiate between them and any Palestinian child in Gaza killed by the occupation." And with that, I'll be signing off for today, my friends. And this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Kalamata, Greece on October 6, 2025.